Guys, welcome to the panel, and we'll jump right into it. Rhino, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you, and we'll kind of go around the group as well. But what does it mean to be an angel investor? What's your background, and why are you investing in startups?
I mean, to be an angel investor is you're kind of choosing to take pretty high risk capital and try to help build a stronger entrepreneurial ecosystem for our city here in Boise. So my background is I was initially an entrepreneur myself. I worked at ProClarity, went through the entire life cycle of that company from pre-revenue all the way through exit. We got bought by Microsoft at the end of about 10 years that I was there. And shortly after that, I joined the original Boise Angel Fund, and that was really my introduction to angel investing. I think as an angel investor, one of the important things that you got to realize is that any given deal that you make, the most likely outcome is you're going to lose all your money. So you're going to have to make sure that you're looking at this as a long-term set of investments that over time you're going to hopefully have a few winners that more than make up for a lot of the losses that you're going to have. I
love it. And opening it up to the broader group, Blake and Joel, how do you think about it?
For me, as someone who's been an entrepreneur most of my life, I look at it as an opportunity to use my knowledge and experience in selecting the right startups for me to invest in, or my group to invest in. Things that I'm familiar with, not necessarily specific industries, but models. So for example, I look for startups that have a subscription component or a recurring revenue component. That's something I've dealt a lot with in my professional career. And then also just personally, I have founded businesses like that. And so more important to me than the industry is the model.
Yeah, for me, I'll jump in here for a minute. I got started as an angel investor because I saw it as a way to give back to my community. And as a business operator and business owner myself, I thought, well, there's probably a group of entrepreneurs who are out struggling, looking for support, looking for capital. And I wonder if I could help out in any way. So that's led me into investing with other angels and just always on the lookout for ways to support others who are just trying to start and scale companies.
You know, Joel, you touched on something interesting, and that was a little bit on what types of businesses, are appealing and attractive to you, what you're looking for. And maybe I'll open up that subject to the broader group. Maybe, Blake, just hopping back with you. What kind of industries, business models, types of businesses stand out as maybe fitting into your investment thesis?
I think in Boise, or in Idaho at large, we don't necessarily have the luxury of being very specific or narrow in scope in what we get to invest in. And as it turns out, I have investments across a lot of different industries, a lot of different revenue models, et cetera. And that's just because there aren't concentrations of industry, et cetera, here where I invest. That being said, I think you could look at what's hot and what's not and know what the later stages of financing might be for different companies, different industries, and different models. And so there are some that just have a higher probability of success. Here in Boise, I think we tend to have hardware plays, we tend to have software plays, and there's always the food play too here, just because of Albertsons and Winco, just the ag base of the state. So in particular, I'm not looking at a certain industry. I'm looking for entrepreneurs who I believe in, who are coachable, who are continually learning through experimentation, and yeah, I don't have just a specific industry or niche that I'm looking for.
Yeah, I'll concur. I mean, I would say a majority of my investments are in the SaaS area, software as a service. But in Boise, you really find the entrepreneurs that you believe have the right traits and capabilities and grit to be successful. Typically investing in the earlier stages. So we're typically amongst the first capital in. So these companies are the pre-revenue or have a slight bit of revenue coming in the door. And our goal as angels, or at least as the group that on the trolley group, is we want to believe that we can help them get to that next round of more institutional money. So we'll help them get through those early phases, either to a Series C or to a Series A. But really, entrepreneurs is most important, and then I think industries that have a high potential of growth is probably the general blanket of what we're investing in.
And thinking about that with a broad group of industry focuses, business models in your portfolio, how do prospective investments find you, or how do you find them? What's that? How does that all come together?
Maybe I'll jump in here. Idaho is an interesting angel market. I think it surprises people how sophisticated the investors sometimes are, and also how much capital is here. But also, I think it's a surprise to startup founders how non-cohesive the angel investors are. There's not really a central clearinghouse here. And so that just means that there's some hustle, networking, following the leads, getting to the right people, especially if you're a founder who's just graduated from college and this is their very first business they've ever started, and their business partner was their roommate in college, and this is also their first business. That's not an impossible hill to overcome, but some of the things that help are collecting experienced board members, or really landing a good investor. So for example, if I find out that Rhino has invested or Blake has invested, then I'm much more interested in the pitch. And so there is, I think, the success that I've seen with startups collecting angel money are the ones that really hustle and connect all the dots. And at the end of the pitch, I love it when they ask me, who else do you think I should be talking to? Who do you think in the investor community would be interested in this idea? That's a great question. And whether or not I invest with you, or Blake invests with you, or Rhino, they probably have some good ideas of other people you can talk to.
Yeah, I think playing a little bit on what Joel's saying is, I think you want to get introduced to investors through somebody they know. I mean, I think networking is a really important skill and trait for a founder, period. And I think, rather than trying to cold call one of us or any angel investor, I think you're better off figuring out how do you connect to that person and use that warm introduction. It'll get you a lot more credibility than if you just try to contact somebody cold.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting ecosystem, because there's outside of Rhino, and Trolley House, there's no real structured affiliations. There's not the Salt Lake City Angels and the Park City Angels, and that doesn't really exist here. Historically, there was the Boise Angel Alliance, but that doesn't exist anymore. And there haven't really emerged any managers of early stage money. So what it is just these loose affiliations. I think that, like Joel said, that can be really difficult for someone that's looking for capital, because there are a lot of entry points into the early stage investing scene, but they don't all overlap, and you find money in very random places. So I know of startups right now that their strategy is raised from farmers in southeastern Idaho, for example, and raising millions of dollars using that strategy. Others, it's who's in your group, who do your parents know, who do you know? It's not structured, and it can be very challenging for me. I welcome people reaching out to me if it's on LinkedIn or whatever, and that's how I connect with a lot of people. Or I just offer my resources, whatever that might be, to connect people however that might be helpful. I keep a list of other investors that I've been on cap tables with, and so that can be helpful as we're looking for industry expertise, or some knowledgeable check writers that might be useful to an entrepreneur. And that's something that I open up all the time when I sit down with an entrepreneur.
These are all really fascinating perspectives, and interesting with it being so spread out, even thinking through how each of you bring each other into deals and get the right angels involved. And it begs the question for me, how has the angel round changed in Idaho over the last several years? What can an entrepreneur feasibly raise? And maybe I'll direct this back to you, Blake. But what size of a round can an entrepreneur feasibly raise from the angel community these days?
I think historically, an entrepreneur couldn't raise the angel round in Idaho, and I don't mean that disparagingly, but it was difficult for an entrepreneur, an early stage company, to find all of that capital, that, call it $150,000 to $500,000, difficult to come by in Idaho alone. And so a lot of these entrepreneurs were having to go to Seattle and Salt Lake City and San Francisco, into their networks, wherever they might have come from. If they emanated from Chicago, they were back raising in Chicago or whatever, from their friends and family. I think what's changed from what I've seen is you can raise all your money here locally. Now, I don't think it's easy. I don't think that there's a single path. I don't think there's like a textbook answer of how do you do it. But I've seen more and more companies raising exclusively from Idaho money. But that being said, I also see most entrepreneurs raising a hybrid from still a concentration of Idaho money and some regional money too. So I don't know if that's the right answer, but that's what I still see.
And I've also seen the size of the rounds that they've been able to raise go up dramatically. I mean, I would say 5 years ago, if you raised $500,000 in Idaho, that was a really, really good accomplishment. And I've seen several companies just in the last year or two raise, more than $1 million from Idaho investors. That does come with the people that are doing it in general have pretty good pedigrees. They've either done it before or they're highly credible within their industry. But so that the two ESU students are not going to raise $1 million very easily in Idaho. But people that have either done that or been part of startups and had some success and experience behind them, it is possible for sure.
I think it's also important to distinguish the difference between the raises. If it's the first raise, $500,000 could be doable, but it also might be a pretty, you want to give yourself some time to raise that. When it's your second or third raise, I have found that money comes pretty easy here in Idaho. Not easy, but usually folks are able to do their second and third rounds almost exclusively with their first round investors, if they're doing a couple of angel rounds. And so to me, what that tells me is the investors here, like Rhino said, really place a lot of importance on credibility. So if it is your very first go round, people typically don't want to be the first investor. They want to, I've even said this sentence before: go see if you can get Blake to invest, and then go talk to him. but like Rhino said, if you're Jessica Rolfe with Love That Reach, she had no problem raising money. She's turning people away with her second company that she started because she had that credibility. So I think the question requires a little bit of identification about what phase, what round, what raise is it.
Yeah, and that's interesting too. What I've seen is there are more successful entrepreneurs in town, in Boise in particular, and even Eastern Idaho and North Idaho. There are bigger pockets of money to go after today than there have been in the past, and that's just natural. As the economy grows and more people are here, there's bigger pockets of money to go after. You have companies that have had some pretty big exits, and unfortunately in Idaho, there aren't usually big option pools for all the employees, so a lot of that wealth is still concentrated into a certain few individuals' hands. And so those are gatekeepers. Those people have money and they're investing and they're finding ways to get the money out, but they haven't really established these family offices or these pooled investment vehicles. They haven't really brought in managers of their wealth to focus exclusively on early stage like you see in some other markets. So while the money is there, it's a little less sophisticated. It's not necessarily about, hey, there's this way that you go and get money from, this founder that had a big exit or this founder that had a big exit. So I just think there's bigger money. In fact, I saw in the deal flow report, we track the deals, and so I see some of this, and I saw an angel round that was north of $1 million from a single angel at town, and that's that's unusual, but that's happening, and we're tracking it, so we're seeing it, and that these are directly related to some of the big businesses in Idaho and some of the wealth that's being generated here.
So this is a bit of an addition to this conversation. With all this hype around people moving to Boise, moving to Idaho in general, getting out of some of the startup hubs, are you, as angel investors, are you starting to see that impact in your deal flow, in your companies? And how do you project that to kind of change your ecosystem going forward?
I've seen a significant uptick in California-based companies that have moved to Idaho and are raising capital here. And I think that it's both good and bad. I think in some of these cases that entrepreneurs and these early stage companies actually have some capital that they're bringing with them. And in the worst cases, they have none. And they're wasting a lot of time trying to get inroads into a capital market that's really difficult to get into, and naturally distrusting of the California company or the California person. And I hate to pick on California in particular, but that it's just something that I see more and more. We can talk about names, but I see some really great companies and great entrepreneurs that have pedigree and that have experience that are coming to Idaho. And that makes me feel very good, because I think new capital will be coming to Idaho along with these entrepreneurs. And that makes me feel very optimistic. And I think naturally the angel ecosystem is built around the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I'm talking about successful entrepreneurs reinvest in the up and coming entrepreneurs. So the more exits you have, the more, even the non-VC backed companies that are successful lead to more success for the ecosystem. So generally speaking, I think it's mostly good in what you're seeing, but I think there's some bad where people say, well, I'll just show up and I'm from California and I have a great idea and people are going to invest because I'm from California, and that just doesn't ever work.
Especially here. No, I think the net growth, the positive is you have a lot more talent that can now move to Idaho, and it's no longer considered a career risk as it might have been, even before just COVID. Is you can come here, there's great companies here. In worst case, you love the lifestyle, you can go find another job in the Bay Area now and stay in Idaho. So I think you've reduced the barrier to entry for talent to come help our companies grow. So I think it's a net positive with potentially some downside as well.
I also think Idaho is appealing because it provides a longer burn. Raising $1 million and trying to do your startup in Silicon Valley is going to be difficult. If you had $1 million in Boise, that's going to go a lot longer and give you more time to make mistakes and make corrections and make pivots. And labor's cheaper here. Office space is cheaper here. So I think that's appealing again for startups.
Yeah, and retention's a lot easier in Idaho than it is in Silicon Valley.
Also,
I think historically you have so many examples of founders that had to go to Seattle to raise their money. Founders that had to go to Salt Lake City and raise their money. And I don't think that's the case. I think there still are the angels or the VCs that are saying, you've got to set up shop here in my town in order for me to invest. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I mean, Jack, that's still something that you hear, but it's not like it was 5 and 10 years ago.
So a bit of a tangent here, and maybe an extension of how you guys work with your businesses. And Joel, I'll direct this Question to you, if you don't mind. How do you guys think about board roles at portfolio companies? And what I'm really getting at is, as you invest in the business and you start this partnership with the entrepreneur, what should they expect from an engagement perspective with you and managing your investment?
I try to let companies know that I have invested in. I try to let them know in what ways I think I can be useful and helpful to them. There's a lot of investments where I'm passive and I have no involvement at all. And then others where I'm more involved, or I am a board advisor, or I sit on the board. And those are typically ones where I can bring a lot of value. It's something that overlaps a lot in my professional efforts, and I can help with pricing and these different types of things. If it doesn't look like I can bring a lot of value, I don't want to be involved, because I want my investment to do well. So I don't want to take up dead space. The space that somebody else who could bring value can be. But the other thing I try to remind people, even if I'm a passive investor, is give updates. I would say, if I've invested in 10 companies, maybe one of them does a quarterly update. And the rest of them is just real sporadic, usually when they need more money, which is unfortunate, because if you give a quarterly or bi-monthly or something update, I think people hesitate doing that because a lot of times in the beginning, it's just mostly negative news. But that's where the investors can be very helpful. I hate finding out too late that my startup was really struggling and they pivoted and maybe made some wrong moves. If they had cued in the rest of the investor pool, the people that had already invested in the company that also have skin in the game early on, hey, we're really struggling with COVID, or we're just lost our best technologist, or whatever. We have Rolodexes, we have ideas, and we all in our own ways have this personal credibility that we can bring to the table. And a lot of times it's just free, right? It's like, let me help. Let me make some introductions. Let me make a phone call. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So whether or not you're, the goal, of course, for you is to raise that money, but the coup d'etat is to raise money with investors that actually can help, that any one of them could be a board member for you, or any one of them could give great advice or make an introduction. That's what you really want, right? That's the gold, is if you can do your raise and every one of your investors is somebody valuable.
Yeah, the best thing you can have on your investor newsletter, like Joel says, is have an ask section. Every time you send it out, like, hey, here's things I need. It might be introductions to customers. It might be help finding talent. It might be a myriad of things. But you're right. It's a group of people that have a vested interest in your success, and you're sending them a letter. And if they see it and say, hey, I can help you with this one, that's huge. And that regular newsletter is an important part of that.
It's also valuable to the investor, because sometimes there's an ask on there and I don't have any great ideas, but then Rhino replies all, hey, I know so-and-so, da-da-da-da-da. And then I privately reply to Rhino, hey, I'd love an introduction too to that company or that person.
It is part of your ecosystem, is your investor community.
Yeah,
for sure.
I once heard Brad Wiskerson say that as he was getting ready for their $90 million Series A round. So it's a little bit unusual, but he was getting hit up by a whole bunch of VCs, and he decided that he would create this friends of count list. I just love this idea that in advance of taking money, you want to see the value that a capital provider can bring to you as an entrepreneur, to the company. And so that's something that's lived with me as an angel investor, is what kind of value can I add before I write a check? And I think for an entrepreneur, when you look at it from that lens, you can know that there's a higher likelihood of a capital provider to be helpful after post-investment if they were helpful pre-investment. And if a capital provider is a pain pre-investment, high likelihood that they're going to be a pain post-investment. And sometimes you just don't have the luxury of being choosy about your capital. But that's a really big key to success, is having the right money from the right people. And so I think the more you can be selective as an entrepreneur, the higher probability of being successful you might be.
Guys, this is fantastic. We're winding down to a close here as we sneak up on our 30-minute mark. I'd like to take the last 3 minutes or so and just give each of you a minute to update us as a community on one or two or more of your favorite recent investments just from the last maybe 6 months or a year. And maybe Rhino, we can start with you and then Joel and then Blake.
Sure. Yeah, probably my most recent investment, actually one that I really like, is Killer Creamery. So getting out of the tech industry for a while and actually investing in food. Louis Armstrong, the founder, is a great entrepreneur. He's really bootstrapped this thing from almost nothing by himself, and he's finally at a point where he's getting some great scale, and he's he's in the middle of raising a round of capital right now. He's done a great job building that Killer Creamery brand and really kind of addressing that keto ice cream market that he's going after. So that's one that's very recent and very, very, very fun one for me.
I'll go. I'm in Killer Creamery. I love it. I made an investment in Stage.O recently and got access to some early stage companies there. A couple of them are already going to their Series A. Really excited about them. Gather, obviously, that I think we're all in, has been a great success and moving on to their Series A here. Lumini, really excited about what Corey and Megan are doing over there. And like what Clay's doing at Seeking Simple, and made an early stage investment there. So yeah, those are, among others in the last year, like Jewel Case, I came in again. Retrolux finally made an investment in the last 12 months. So yeah, just some great things going on.
Yeah, I shouldn't have gone last. Everything that has been mentioned are companies I've invested in as well. But I really like Jason Houski and Cause, Jessica Rolfe and Love Every. I really like Gather. Maybe I just talk for a minute about Gather. So Gather, and this is how they say it in their industry, it's death care software. And so it's for the funeral care world. And it's, they've been using Excel spreadsheets for the last 25 years. And so Gather has come along and digitized all of this and made it all potentially virtual. And then COVID hit. And so it has exploded, of course, for different companies. COVID has been really powerful, and Gather's one of them. But, I initially was attracted to Gather because it had this subscription component, even though I know nothing about death care. Other than what we all superficially know. But it's been fascinating. They even let me tag along to one of the national industry events, and that was extremely interesting.
Another one to throw in that was a recent one, not on this list, is Fitted, which is actually a California company that's repositioning itself here in Boise. And they help the retail running shoe industry move with that online e-commerce movement. They've also been really benefiting from the whole, COVID and the lack of any physical retail space. So they are one of those companies that has moved here, and they've raised capital both in California and here in Boise.
It's just so incredible to me how many of the companies on that list wouldn't have been on it, 2 years ago, kind of thing. And they're all really fascinating businesses. So congratulations on all you're doing. It's exciting and it's a privilege for funds like ours to be able to work with you. Joel, Blake, Rhino, again, our sincerest thanks for your participation in this panel. And again, for your ongoing support of the Idaho startup ecosystem. It's just incredible what you're doing and the businesses you're backing and helping grow. Again, it's just a privilege to be here and to be chatting with each of you.